Good morning, Happy Valley, and welcome back to another edition of the Penn State 365 podcast. I'm your host, Richie O'Leary, and joined as always when we're talking Penn State football recruiting, my co-host, my right-hand man when it comes to the HappyValleyInsider.com, Dylan Cowan-Crawley. Dylan, big weekend for Penn State. A lot of official visitors. Not a huge list, but a solid, what am I looking at, 10 to 12 around that range?
I think 11.
11. All right, so right in between. Perfect. So let's start talking about some of these guys. The first name on the list I really want to talk about is Lex Cyrus, a guy we've had future casted to Penn State for quite some time now. How did that visit go, and do we still feel like the Nittany Lions are in the lead there?
Yeah, I think Penn State's still the top team here, the team to beat going forward. Has a South Carolina official visit heading into this weekend, of course. Expect him to take that visit, but it sounds like after that visit, we could be seeing a decision out of Cyrus in the near future, and I would expect as of right now for our future cast to stay with Penn State. I think Penn State feels very good about their chances there, and I know we feel good about Penn State's chances with the Susquehanna Township standout here heading into a South Carolina OV.
Okay, awesome. I know South Carolina is always a little bit of a tough one when it comes to recruiting, especially nowadays because they do have a nice little NIL bank. But all right, that's good. They have Lyric Samuel, who was on campus this weekend too. I know it wasn't official, but how much does something like that and Beckham Kritza coming to campus kind of help with a guy like Lex or even other recruits too?
No, yeah, pure recruiting is huge. Not just class to class, but even with the player hosts on campus. In the 2024 recruiting class, they had Cooper Cousins as the leader of that class, and he's going to continue to be one of those lead peer recruiters. They're going to make sure that their top offensive line targets, for example, get connected with a guy like Cooper Cousins to for him to help recruit them to Penn State. And then in this class with Beckham Kritza, Samuel, and others, that's big as well to get two guys who are committed to the program, see the vision of the program from their eyes, and try to get that through to other recruits. It's big. Peer recruiting is a huge factor in college football. It's not the biggest by any means. It's probably a little bit down the list, but still pretty big overall, and has a huge impact on recruiting as a whole as well.
Yeah, I know one guy that Beckham Kritza was heavily after this weekend, and that kind of goes into our next prospect too. Corey Sims, the 4-star from Missouri. Yeah. I know going into the weekend, it sounded like he was a heavy Missouri lean, which makes sense. Hometown school, all that good stuff. Yeah. Also, they have obviously significant NIL, which we've talked about because they stole someone out of Pennsylvania. So, how do we feel Penn State kind of did this weekend? Do they have a shot? Are they sitting at number 2 still?
I think Penn State is legitimately up there with Missouri in this Sims recruitment, and I think they have a definite chance of winning this one in a couple weeks when he probably makes that decision. But yeah, it's going to be tough. You look at the other competitors here: USC, Nebraska, Missouri, taking 3 official visits next 3 weeks to those schools. That order, all those schools have the financial standing NIL wise to make an impact in this recruitment, and especially Missouri. I mean, we talked about the figures before that are being thrown out for a guy like Matt Zollers. Missouri can easily get into the high 6 figures, low 7 figures for a guy. I don't know where Corey Sims is in that regard for them, but this is definitely one where Penn State's going to have to continue to obviously recruit him over the next few weeks from afar, and then just hope that the impact they made on this official visit is enough to withstand the next 3 guys, next 3 programs, especially Missouri. I think that's going to obviously be the big deciding one. But I think Penn State entering this weekend's OV to USC for Sims is, if they're not 1, they're very close to. And I think this one is going to go down to the wire.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's huge for Marquise Higgins, especially because for the longest time they've only had 1 wide receiver commit. So potentially could be 2 down the line. Another receiver that was on campus, the 3rd and final one, was Quincy Porter. I shouldn't say arguably, he is the Northeast top receiver, I believe, in terms of rankings. Yeah. But going into this one, sounded like it was an Ohio State-Michigan battle. Now it sounds like Penn State's kind of up their game a bit and gained some ground this weekend. And it sounds like they might be tied for number 2. It still sounds like OSU might be in front, if I'm reading that correct.
Yeah, I've actually heard different people tell me Ohio State, different people tell me Michigan head into this Penn State OV. I think Penn State did themselves a lot of favors in this recruitment, but this is still one that I just have a hard time seeing them win right now. But I've been wrong before. This could be one that I'm wrong on. I still want to ask more around regarding this Quincy Porter OV, but it was definitely a very positive official visit for him to Penn State. I know the one Penn State source I talked to felt like they did a really great job with that one specifically. So I think Penn State definitely has tightened the gap here, but we'll see if it was enough to pull themselves in front and then win this one outright over Ohio State and Michigan. A lot still to be decided in this recruitment over the next few weeks.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like he's going to make a decision either late June or early July, so it'll be something to keep an eye on. He does have an Oklahoma visit, too. I don't think there'll be much of a factor, personally, but we'll wait and see, I guess. Another Jersey guy that's on campus is Paramus Catholic offensive lineman Malachi Goodman. Malachi took a visit to Auburn in May, had an official visit to Penn State this weekend, also has Georgia, Alabama, and USC coming up. Right now, it sounds like Penn State's at the top, if not right at the near the top, or if not at the top, alongside Auburn and Georgia. It sounds like he might go down south, but it also sounds like Penn State made a hell of a push, and Phil Troutwine is the backbone of this recruitment, it seems like.
Yeah, we actually have a story with Goodman going up soon. And it's tough to gauge because he's a man of few words. So it's hard to gauge how he really feels coming out of it. But from what I heard from my sources, is Penn State did a fantastic job in this one. Has definitely put themselves in that top grouping of schools here with the official visits to Auburn, Georgia. Well, yeah, he took an OB to Auburn. Visits to Georgia, Alabama, USC still coming up. That relationship with Phil Troutwine and the rest of the coaching staff has been huge of recent, especially this past weekend. He was very positive in what I was able to get out of him. So I definitely think Penn State here is in a much better spot than they were coming into the OV, at least in my eyes. We'll see if this is one that can last until August, or is it kind of just a post-official visit high? But they definitely did themselves a lot of favors in this one this weekend.
Yeah, like you said, he doesn't plan on deciding until August, so long way to go for that one. But Penn State seems like they're in a good spot, like you said. Next up on the list, 4-star defensive end Cedric Works coming over out of Ohio. It sounds like Penn State made a very good case for the Nittany Lions to be the leader here as well. Deion Barnes seems like he has built quite the bond with them.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Penn State definitely had a very good official. Let's just be honest. Everybody we're going to go down the list with, they all had great official visits. So I'm going to stop saying that. They all had great official visits. Penn State did a great job with all these recruits, as far as I know. With Cedric, this is going to be an interesting one. He has OVs to Cincinnati, Florida, Kentucky coming up. Kentucky usually does pretty good with those Cincinnati area kids, which Cedric Works is. So that's going to be one to watch closely. But Penn State, I think, has probably made themselves the leader as of right now. I think there's some other stuff that has to be worked out with Works. So we'll see how that affects everything. But definitely a name to know on the defensive end side of things going forward for Penn State. Because we all know the struggles of that position group in this class. It's been a weak class in region, especially as well in state. The best defensive end in the region is Zahir Mathis. He's currently committed to Ohio State out of St. Joe's Prep, of course, or Imhotep. Imhotep, of course. But outside of Zahir Mathis, it's been a pretty weak defensive end class regionally. Works, guess you could kind of fit that into the region a bit, but definitely a name to watch going forward, but definitely not a commitment coming anytime soon here.
Now, one defensive line defensive line target that is in the region, Paint Branch High School down in Maryland, Yvonne Kemaju. I think I pronounced that correct. Probably didn't, but whatever. I try. Anyway, he had a really good visit to campus. I know you said everyone had a really good visit to campus, but it sounds like he might have had a better visit than anyone, and it sounds like he might be the closest out of everyone, maybe not Lex Cyrus, to potentially choosing the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because you're talking about a kid who's only blown up over the last few months. So this type of attention is really, he's not used to this type of attention. So I'm wondering how, much enamored he was this weekend by everything, and just what him and his inner circle are going to decide over the next few weeks. Because he still has OVs to West Virginia, Duke, Virginia Tech. But as I said, coming in this official visit weekend, if Penn State pushes for him, this is one that they should absolutely win, and I still agree with that sentiment. If Penn State's willing to take him, I think he's eventually going to be a Nittany Lion. It's just a matter of when Penn State wants to take him. If they're willing to take him, when they want to take him, and who they may await for decisions from before going to him. But all those things I'm sure will be worked out here in the upcoming weeks. But definitely think Penn State's in a very good spot. Like you said, outside of Lex Cyrus, this is probably the guy that you can point to. There's one other, Lex Cyrus and Antonio Branch, who we'll talk about in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Outside of those two, this is probably the next guy on that list in terms of guys you can see committed to the Nittany Lions here in the upcoming months.
Yeah, like you said, Penn State, West Virginia, Duke, Virginia Tech, 98% of the time, Penn State's going to win that recruiting battle. So, like you said, it's just going to come down to if they want to take him and if he's ready to commit too. So, we'll wait and see. But he's a fast riser, a late riser, I should say.
Fast and late riser. I mean, he exploded, like we said, the last few weeks, months, and he went from a relative unknown to a 4-star prospect, top 10 prospect in the state of Maryland, practically overnight in the grand scheme of things.
Next up on our list is Fort Bend Christian Academy High School down in Texas. Defensive end Max Granville coming in at number 220 nationally, 5.8 4-star, top 35 in the state of Texas, top 10 defensive end. Blah blah. He's got all the accolades. Now, every one of his officials, other than USC, is in the Texas region, whether it be Texas A&M, Oklahoma, or Baylor, which he's already taken to Baylor. It sounds like he's been a long-time Texas A&M lean. Does Penn State have any shot here?
Yeah, so this is recruitment kind of reminds me, and I'm not saying it's going to end the same, but it reminds me a lot of T.A. Cunningham last year. That was a recruitment that the entirety of his recruitment, I felt like if he was an in-region kid, Penn State would almost be like a no-brainer type place for him. I thought there would be a great chance he would be a Nittany Lion if he was in-region. Yeah. And ultimately, he's still committed to Nittany Lions. Granville is kind of the same way. I think if he was a kid in Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, maybe even Ohio, he would be a kid that Penn State would have a great chance of landing. But unfortunately for Penn State, he's in Texas, and he's one of the best players in the state of Texas. So you got to go up against Baylor, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, but especially those last two. Those two were the two big ones coming in this official visit weekend. And I think Penn State has, like Porter, narrowed that gap between them and the top two programs. And I think Penn State has a chance here to win this recruitment. I just still don't expect it. I expect A&M and Oklahoma to come in with some big official visits and, some big conversations, if you get what I'm saying there. And that could probably help decide this one. But I think Penn State has done a very good job in this recruitment. And like I said, if he was an in-region prospect, I think there's a great chance he would end up being an Nittany Lion. But coming from Texas, this is just it's an uphill battle even with how good they've done in this one.
Yeah. Next up, moving on to linebacker. Now, Penn State currently has 3 linebacker commits. One of them actually just took a visit to a Big Ten conference mate in Rutgers, and DJ McClary. But Ty Jackson, 4-star, came up from Seminole Ridge High School down in Florida. Do we think Penn State has any shot there, really? I know there's a lot of talk he's going to stay down south.
Yeah, it's kind of like Granville again. Now, um, maybe not to the same extent, but I think if he was a closer prospect, Penn State would have a much better chance in this one. But
Mm-hmm.
Georgia, Florida State, those are two schools once again willing to throw around the NIL money.
Yep.
Uh, and Georgia, I mean, Georgia doesn't need the NIL money to recruit.
True.
Georgia just
Very true.
needs to point to the two national championship trophies they've won in the last 3 years and all the success they've had under Kirby Smart. That's all they have to point to.
Yep.
And everybody who's in the NFL now. So I think Penn State definitely put themselves in a better spot, but yeah, I see him staying south. Maybe I'm surprised here, but
Mm-hmm.
I would say I see him staying south for now.
Yeah, I did reach out to him. I did get a couple quotes from him. He's a very, very quiet kid, so we're probably not going to turn it into an article.
Yeah,
But
doesn't he's one of those recruits that I don't want to say doesn't enjoy the recruiting process, but definitely is going to be happy when it's all said and done.
oh yeah, and that happens from time to time. It's not too shocking. But
No,
next up on the list, McDonough High School, a place that Penn State has done relatively well at over the past couple years. Four-star cornerback, recent addition to the Rivals 250, Brandon Finney.
yeah,
How do we feel like Penn State did there? It sounds like they're pretty optimistic from this one.
yeah. I think Penn State is the in the driver's seat heading into the rest of his official visits.
It's huge.
South Carolina, Georgia, Oregon, all coming up next 3 weeks. So will be tough competition once again. Three schools that, if they want to, can throw around the money.
Yep.
And and again, backtrack a little. I'm not saying Penn State can't throw around NIL money. Penn State is definitely in a better spot NIL wise compared to a year ago, 2 years ago. But you're talking about you know Georgia, Oregon, and then South Carolina is no slouch, despite not having maybe as much success on the field. I think coming in this past weekend though was really what Penn State, South Carolina perceived as the two schools here,
Yep.
and then Georgia and Oregon. That probably depends on how those schools see him on their board. But yeah, I think Penn State's in the driver's seat here. I think they would have loved to try to get this one past the finish line this weekend and not have to try to survive these official visits. But I think their success in McDonough is going to play a factor here. I think the proximity to State College is going to play a factor here, and then also just the development they've done at cornerback. You can argue outside of Georgia. I mean, it's not even an argument. Outside of Georgia, Penn State has been the best of those four at developing cornerbacks. You can argue that Penn State, to a degree, has been better at developing corners recently than Georgia. You can argue Georgia. I wouldn't argue back, but I think all those factors combined, Penn State is in a very good spot here to land Finney when he's ready to make a decision.
Now, let me ask you this: do we kind of feel like this could be a potential recruitment similar to Mason Robinson, another McDonough kid, where he commits elsewhere, but Penn State still pushes and potentially lands him down the line, even if they don't land him now?
I would be surprised if that happened with Finney, but you can never rule that out, especially because he could go to that Georgia Oregon visit and he can get blown away, decide to come in on the spot. But I feel pretty good where Penn State sits right now. Not in a future cast territory just yet because those Georgia and Oregon visits loom big, but pretty close to a future cast territory, I would say.
Okay, awesome. That's huge. Next up, another four-star cornerback, Grayson Littleton, coming up from Wiregrass High School down in Florida. Now, he's technically on an official visit right now because he went from Penn State to Clemson and then goes to Bama on Friday. Also has Oklahoma and Iowa, but where we kind of feel Penn State sits in this one?
Yeah, so this is one of those where, Penn State gets the early official visit. We got a special guest on the podcast.
Yeah.
Penn State gets the early official visit. Now he gets 3 official visits in 11 days to Clemson, Alabama, and Oklahoma. You got to think that maybe towards the end of this stretch, even by that Alabama trip, he's going to be tired. He would be on the road for basically 7 straight days, and then 3 different schools. So I think Penn State put themselves in a good spot right now that they could very well be the leader coming out of this official visit. But you're talking about a Florida kid, a 4-star prospect, and you're talking Clemson, Alabama, Oklahoma, and
Mhm.
then Iowa is kind of an interesting OV at the end of this. But I think it's going to be hard to keep him out of the South, whether that's Clemson or
Mhm.
Alabama. But I think Penn State definitely has put themselves in a favorable position. Just this is a lot for Grayson. A lot of visits for Grayson in a really short period of time. I mean,
Mhm.
4 visits within 2 weeks is a ton. And then, of course, that Iowa one at the end. Wouldn't be surprised that Iowa one did happen. That's not any inside info. Just kind of looking
Mhm.
at the visits. But
Yeah.
yeah, uh, overall did well, but it's going to be tough to hold on to this one, I think. But I wouldn't rule it out either.
All right, and last but not least from the weekend is high 3-star, borderline 4-star safety. Antonio Branch Jr. came up from Northwestern High School down to Miami. And he told us, or told both of us the other day, that Penn State is the team to beat following the
Yeah.
visit. Now, he's also taken a visit to Nebraska back in April. Penn State was this past weekend. He also has a break this upcoming week, man, before heading to Florida on the 14th and Louisville on the 21st. Do we think those two visits happen at this point?
I wouldn't be surprised if the Florida one happens. I'd be maybe slightly surprised if Louisville happens. But he says Penn State's a team to beat. We should just be put in the future cast now, right?
Yeah.
But that Florida one is just get. Let's see where everything stands after that Florida one. I still think Penn State is a very good spot here. Likely wins this recruitment in the end. But just want to see what the Gators do. The Gators have been a pain in the butt to Penn State over the last few years. We remember the 2023 cycle specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just want to see what happens with that Florida visit. But I don't think Louisville is really a threat. As you noted on our preview podcast, Louisville is the alma mater of Antonio Branch's new head coach, Teddy Bridgewater,
Mm-hmm.
former Louisville legend, of course.
Yep.
So I think that one was almost a little bit of a courtesy visit for Teddy. But outside of
Mm-hmm.
that, I think Penn State's in a very good spot here. I expect them to win this one as things stand right now, but uh, just see what happens with that Florida visit before I put in any official future casts.
So let me ask you this too: would Penn State take him? Because I know they still have 4 safeties coming up for official visits in the next couple weeks. And how many
Base
safeties will they take?
based off what I have heard, I think they would take him.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely seem very high on him.
Mm-hmm.
You're right; they do have a couple more coming up. Canoa Winston, Jadon Blair. They seem to be in a better spot for Winston than Blair. Blair still
Mm-hmm.
seems to be not a heavy Notre Dame lean, but a Notre Dame lean.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think they would take him. In terms of how many they would take, I have to look at the numbers last time I did it, but I'd imagine they at least 2, and then if there's a third one that they absolutely can't turn down, they would probably try to make that work.
Gotcha. All right, cool. So that's the whole recap for the weekend. Right now, no one has committed yet. I don't want to go too in depth on next weekend, but I do want to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number one, Jabree Coleman's coming to campus. 4-star running back, top 200 kid, top 175, something like that. Forget what he is exactly, but regardless, my question to you basically about him is
125.
125. Would they take him? Because Keandre Barker will be at Arkansas next weekend. Could this just be a quick flip flop and that's it?
Um, I don't expect any decision this weekend, but I think I've said before, this is absolutely a case where Penn State is definitely a contender for Jabree Coleman, Wallace Coleman,
Mm-hmm.
and it's gonna depend on how I think the 3 commits. You know, uh, if the 3 commits stay committed, obviously I think Hayes we all feel good about. He's going to stay committed,
Mm-hmm.
but Alvin Henderson has already taken official visits, not official visits, has already taken
Unofficial.
visits elsewhere at Auburn. And you talked about Barker visiting Arkansas. If Barker decommits, I can absolutely see Coleman jumping right in to this Penn State class.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have not reached out specifically to ask about if they would take him as a fourth, but just in my gut, I feel like 4 would be a lot, even if you feel like one is going to decommit.
Yeah.
Uh, it's that's a lot of scholarships to dedicate to one position, especially when you look at their overall recruiting so far. I feel like 13 commitments. 9, I think, are on the offensive side of the ball. Definitely have to start committing scholarships to the defensive side going forward. It's going to be defensive heavy going the rest of the way through this cycle. But if something happens to Henderson or Barker, I think they would absolutely be willing to take Jabree Coleman.
Actually, so texted someone I know on the Imhotep staff, and Penn State has actually moved his visit back to June 21st. So kind of lines up with what you just said. Kind of said they're going to see what happens with these. Yep.
Wait
and then push him back as far as you can. I think Coleman personally wants on board, and it's insane to me that they might not have room for a top 125 kid, which is crazy. But it just goes to show you how Sider and the running back recruiting has been over the years. And specifically this year.
Right, and I think Penn State's also in a spot where they know, like, hey, if we have a spot that opens up, this is a kid we can, not even this week, or this month, but if one of the running backs decommits, a month before signing day, I think Penn State is in a spot here with Coleman where they feel like they could jump right into that recruitment and have a great chance of getting him to commit, whether if that takes flipping him from somewhere else at the time or not. But I think they're in a spot here with Coleman where they know that he would want in eventually if they have the room, so they can kind of slow play this one.
Yeah, for sure. Other notable, I should say, other visitors.
Again, not jumping deep into it, but I guess we could kind of list off the other guys that are coming this weekend.
That's what I figured.
Matthew Alden, I think, is going to be a name to know this weekend. Wide receiver target, somebody they're in a good spot for. Canoa Winston, we talked about a ton. Rashad Johnson, coming up from Florida, will be on campus. Florida DT Jerquez Carter, cornerback Darius Dixon will be on campus. Linebacker Zayden Walker, close to a 5-star prospect. He's top 40 at number 32 overall. Heavy Georgia lean there, but he'll be on campus. Safety Josh Johnson, definitely somebody to watch going forward at that safety spot, depending on how things break. Nolan Davenport's an offensive tackle. They recently scheduled an OV with Jaden Woods. Jeff Exiner, wide receiver. He canceled his Michigan State OV this past weekend. I think that essentially makes this a Penn State Virginia Tech battle. Future casts right now are with Virginia Tech, but as I've said before, I have a good feeling that that could flip back to Penn State here with this upcoming OV. Philip Bell is coming out from California this week as well. So no commitments once again on campus this weekend. Everybody's uncommitted, but going off my gut, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 guys in this group of prospects that I think Penn State is could be a legitimate contender eventually to receive a commitment from. That doesn't mean they're going to receive commitments from all 5 of those guys, but 5 guys I think Penn State is in a good spot for heading into this weekend.
Perfect. If you had to pick one, just give me one that you feel very confident in that could commit, and are most likely to commit out of that group this weekend.
That's a good question because we just talked about Coleman. Coleman got knocked back to 21st, right?
Yeah.
That's tough. Probably Matthew Alden or potentially, like I said, Jeff Exner. I know the future cast right now is on VT, but I have a good feeling for Penn State and that one that they can wrap this one up potentially this weekend. Yeah, it does have OV scheduled to that's the wrong profile. Syracuse and Maryland coming up. I don't think those two are going to factor into this one much. So I think this is Penn State, Virginia Tech, and I could see if everything goes well, a commitment potentially coming early next week if that one does go well.
Awesome. All right. Other than that, I know Penn State had their first camp this weekend of June. Some notable guys that were on campus including Xavier Bridges-Brooks, a safety recruit, which probably won't be pushed too heavily considering, like we just said, they're doing good with Branch. They're doing good with some others, and Canelo Winston, Josh Johnson. Another one that was kind of intriguing that I did want to talk about is Keanu Johnson, the wide receiver out of Connecticut. Ran in the 4.4s last year, ran pretty well this weekend as well, we were told. I know he doesn't have an official visit currently. Do we think he would be a take down the line, or?
I think they're going to wait to see how everything else breaks in this uh, upcoming weeks with these wide receiver. Because if they can get Exeter to commit and they could get a guy like Allen to commit, you then have 3 wide receiver commits. You have room for probably 1 left. I have to go back and look at the numbers. But I think this is a position group that can get filled quite quickly. So depending on how these upcoming weeks break for the Nittany Lions. So I think that's if they need to, they could schedule one for later this month or down the line in the fall.
Another notable guy that was on campus was a 4-star athlete, Braswell Thomas, formerly of Lower Cape May High School down in Jersey, but has since transferred to Pleasantville High School. Pleasantville has a couple different guys that Penn State's shown some interest in, including Alcino Blakely, who's a 2026 kid. I think he has a Penn State offer, actually. If he doesn't, he's got multiple visits and camps lined up to Penn State already. Regardless, Braswell Thomas, that's pretty big to get him on campus for the weekend.
Yeah, definitely one to watch going forward here. I reached out to him to talk to him about how everything went, but definitely one. I would say just to keep a close eye on the boards over at the Lions Den. Just if we may have a interesting update later in the week about that, depending on how everything breaks. So reached out to him yesterday, and we'll see how it goes from there.
Yeah, so I know that he took a trip to Penn State in the spring. I know they talked about him potentially being a safety at the next level. I know he had Syracuse on his official visit list originally for this weekend, but it sounds like he didn't end up making that. He has West Virginia this upcoming weekend and Nebraska the weekend after that. We'll see if those visits end up happening or not, because he did schedule most of these back in March, April, so things obviously changed quite a bit. But he is going to be one to watch, because I think they obviously want to get back in Jersey, and they've done a good job so far. They've gotten DJ McClary on board. They had Jalen Matthews, but kind of mutual parting of ways there. But yeah, they want to get back into the state really bad. They have Malachi Goodman on campus. They have Quincy Porter on campus. They're doing well with Jameer Joseph, who I believe they'll get on campus later this month too. But yeah, so just another notable name. But I guess that's really it. Any final thoughts before we sign off today?
No. And actually, with Braswell, it's also worth noting that if I correct on, he was also on campus last month as well. So,
yep. Yeah.
So he's definitely been to campus now a few times. Again, I reached out to him, hoping to hear back soon, but definitely want to watch here. If all goes well, wouldn't be shocked if an official visit maybe gets scheduled here. They are recruiting him at safety, so again, would be interesting to watch. Go ahead.
I just texted his coach real quick, and goes to show you how quickly he answered. June 21st, he will be on campus for an official visit.
All right, well, there we go.
So another one locked in.
Look at that. Two recruiting scoops here live on the podcast. So, there we go. Braswell Thomas on campus June 21st.
Yep.
So same weekend as Jabree Coleman. Now that Coleman's OV got pushed back. So that'll be one to watch. Again, one of those where they can see how the safety board kind of breaks over the next few weeks. If it comes to be unnecessary, you can easily cancel that. But if things are trending the other direction, that's a recruitment where I think Penn State could absolutely win it if they would need to make a push for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he was on campus. He camped. He looked well. He did well, I should say. And that was it. Simple as that. And Poindexter's the lead recruiter there. Also a little bit of Phil Troutwine as well, just because of regional thing. But, we'll wait and see what happens there. But I know Penn State wants to get back in Jersey. And the easiest way to do that is to land a kid like that. And that's a good start.
Absolutely.
But for me and Dylan, I guess if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button down below on YouTube. Check us out on Facebook, on Twitter, X, whatever the hell you want to call it, at Penn State Rivals, also on Instagram and TikTok. We have plenty of clips, plenty of videos, plenty of stuff coming out every day now. What else am I missing? Spotify, Apple Pods, all that good stuff. Give us a review. I'd really appreciate it. It helps us grow the pod, helps us get more out there, more recognition to Nittany Nation, and just helps us spread more recruit scoop, too. So for me and Dylan, that's another episode of the Penn State 365 podcast. Signing off.